Hey guys, today we are talking about triumph over trauma and how mixed martial arts helps people regain triumph over some social injustices and trauma. And today I have Senpai Chloe and Rachel here to help us talk about that. And we'd like to just share some of our experiences with you and what we've seen on the mat in our We Unite self-defense classes. And so, guys, let's just get right into it. Triumph over trauma. Some of us, I'm shocked when we start these. When we. Chloe already knows what I'm gonna say. When we start these classes on our We Unite self-defense classes, I'm shocked. Women come in looking like you and I. You would never suspect maybe that they have gone through some social injustices. And when I say social injustice, I'm talking about domestic violence. I'm talking about homelessness. I'm talking about maybe being approached or mugged or robbed, different things like that. Everybody should know what social injustice means, right? Things that happen to people that are socially unacceptable in community. I am literally shocked at how many women come into our classes and they share their stories. They get comfortable and they share their stories with us, and they have suffered social injustices. Yeah. What about you guys? How do you feel about that?
I'm definitely shocked all the time, and we don't always have people that share their stories, but you can see it written on them, or like some of the drills that we do, you can see how it affects them.
Sure, you can see some of their shock factors. When we start moving into some self-defenses, we can see the things that are going on in their mind, like they're uncomfortable in these things. And then eventually, somehow it comes out. It might come out in tears. It might come out in
I was gonna say sometimes you can just see the emotion, and it shocks them too that they have an emotional reaction to it.
And they have to take a step back. But the goal is that they get on the mat and we start working the self-defenses, and we start not only working them, we start talking about them, and then over time they are able to find triumph over trauma. That's the goal. That we don't live in the mindset of trauma, but we live in the mindset of victory. That we're not those people anymore, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I would love to just share some experiences. Like for me personally, how We Unite got started was I wanted to join mixed martial arts. My kids were doing it. It looked like a lot of fun. It was something that I wanted to challenge myself with. And I got invited to spar with one of our senseis, and I don't like sparring, and I didn't really know how to spar, but he was like, no, you need to do this. You need to do this. So he invited me into the cage. I'm a swimmer and a dancer. I'm not a sparrer. If you don't know what sparring means, it's like, getting hit and learning how to move. And not have
fighting in the cage.
Like if you watch UFC or anything like that, it was super intimidating for me. But the thing that happened was because of my social injustices from when I was a kid. I was robbed at gunpoint when in my own home. Someone broke into my house. I was alone, robbed at gunpoint when I was 13. And then when I was 16, I had a stalker for about 2 years, and he would come into my home when I was away, at school or whatever. And I would come home and he would be in there in my house hiding. And that went on for about 2 years before the detectives caught him. And so to say that fear was instilled in me at a very young age is probably, an understatement. And I lived in that fear through, maybe 20 years of marriage. If my husband wasn't home, I was scared because I just had that, like anything can happen when I'm home alone, and I did not know how to defend myself. And I knew that. So the mixed martial arts really, piqued my interest because I wanted to learn how to defend myself. But when I got into the cage, it was the day after my 50th birthday, I got into the cage to spar with our sensei. I felt like I froze. Now on camera, I'm still moving forward. If it's hard for me to watch the playback because I just look so inept. But I didn't turtle up. I didn't cry or anything. But I literally felt like I couldn't move, like I was stuck in cement. And so after we were done, I just was trying to get out of our dojo as quick as possible because I just needed to cry. And so I literally cried for 3 days, nonstop. Every time I thought about it, I cried. And I didn't get hurt. It wasn't about that. It was because I felt so trapped, and it brought up, it was a trigger response to the trauma that I had suffered as a kid, and I hadn't overcome it physically yet. And I had overcome it mentally, I had overcome it spiritually, but the physicality of it, I had not overcome yet.
And if you guys watch the video, she does pretty well in there, like for a first time of ever sparring. But obviously it was very emotional to get all of that out.
Super emotional. And so our self-defense class was birthed out of that. Just thinking to myself, like, this happened to me when I was a child. I'm 50 now. This happened to me when I was a kid, and I'm still stuck. I was still stuck physically, and I didn't like that feeling. And so the biggest thing to me was I have to be able to defend myself, and I couldn't even do it in a friendly environment with someone I trusted. What would I do in an environment with someone I didn't know and didn't trust? So I didn't want that freeze mentality anymore. And we have a lot of women, including yourselves, that come in and they have that same feeling, like, I don't know how to defend myself.
Yeah, I agree. And
So-
that's how I felt when I came in.
That's how you felt, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
expound
was-
on that, yeah.
Okay, so when I first went on the mat, for my first women's class, that's exactly what happened to me was, I got in a position where I had been in before from domestic violence, and I froze,
Mm-hmm.
and I broke down.
And that's
So-
very, there's probably lots of emotions that go around that.
That, yes.
So-
yeah, it, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just all coming out. Like my body had that trauma trapped in there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Did you expect to have an emotional reaction?
no, not at all. It had been years since, I had dealt with that person, or even I had done the spiritual healing. I had done the counseling, the therapies, the psychotherapies, things like that. So I kind of felt like I was already healed.
Mm-hmm.
I even had done some yoga, so I didn't know that like things were trapped in my body until I tried the mixed martial arts, and it just so happens like getting on the ground and doing the things like the ground and pound and stuff like that, getting a chokehold or anything like that, I froze.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that happens. I think sometimes we come in and we start working individually. For me, I had been training before I got into the cage and did that sparring session. I had been training. Hitting the bag by myself was not a problem because the
Right,
bag
yeah.
doesn't hit back.
Right.
Kicking the bag was not a problem because the bag
Right.
does not kick back.
Yeah, that actually feels good.
That feels great, right? We're
Yes.
releasing negative energy and it feels good. And it's funny how a lot of women come into our classes, and that's the one thing when we ask at the end, I always ask, hey, what did you love? And a lot
It's
of them
always hitting
say,
the bag.
I love hitting the
Yes.
bag.
Yeah, I agree with
And that to me is always shocking that women love to come in and hit if they've never even hit before they actually enjoyed it. But Rachel, you're saying when it was reciprocated, so when you were in a self-defense move and you were in a position that you had been in before that once was negative,
Yes.
and now you're trying to learn how to positively get out of it, that's where the trigger response came in and you were unexpecting.
That's exactly where it came in, because I knew I was in a safe place, and I knew that I was there to learn how to get out of that position. But being in that position again, just the whole memories, everything came back, and my mind, just everything felt like I even saw the person's face, and I know the person, it was you were
Yes.
helping me, but I saw the person who had did that to me prior. It wasn't your face that I saw.
Right.
So
Right.
it brought everything out. And from
And
there,
put you back in that
it
position.
definitely did. And from there, that's when I had to realize, okay, so there's something trapped in here. And it didn't stop me. I still wanted to learn, like I still am. And it still does bring things out. But I'm able to like slow that moment down, if you will.
Mhm.
And like have composure. Is I was not able to do that before.
Right.
And I've been doing this, what, now, maybe a year?
A
little
year?
bit over a year,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's taken time.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You said you're able to slow it down. Before we start our classes, our We Unite classes, Women Empowered classes, we always bow in and we talk about mind over power. And I think at first sometimes it's just words. People come in and they're like mind over power, because that's what we say. But really, there is something about mind over power.
Yeah.
I would love for you guys to share with everyone here, like, what does that mean to you? What's the mind over power? What's the composure? What are we trying to say? Is it just words, or are we internalizing something much deeper?
It's definitely something much deeper. So with having the composure, so before it was all my body's reaction. My body is reacting. And now it's like I'm able to have my mind there as well, and it's more of a response because I'm learning something and I'm learning that self-defense. So I think that's just the way I can explain it, is it's I'm able to slow my mind down and observe, and I'm not in that freeze moment like as before. I think before it would be more of I was trying to get out of that situation and it was fight or flight.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes,
So
for sure. What about you, Chloe?
For me, I think like partially what she said, it is a mentality. So mind over power, it's being able to slow your mind down and realize what situation you're in, and that you have more control, more power than you think you do, and it's not all just in your head. That you can be able to control what is happening in the situation versus what she said, like fight or flight. Like you're not gonna either freeze or just sit there. So it helps you remember, like, yeah, I can calm my mind down and assess the situation.
Right. And we're trying to build a culture of mind over power. So it's one thing to be in a safe place and gain mind over power to a trigger response. But
Right.
what if you're not in a safe place? What if you're at the grocery store, or you were at a restaurant, or I don't know, if you go out and dance or whatever at a club or something? What happens if someone approaches you? We want to build a culture of we can control our mind, and that way we have power over a situation, right?
Yeah.
We can control our mind first, because we would tend to freeze or flight, or and I've seen that. We have a lot of kids that have trauma. We've adopted a lot of kids that have trauma, and the freeze response is real. We have kids that literally freeze. And sometimes with people who have had severe traumas, they lose literal body control. So we want to develop a culture where we can stop, think, gain control, so therefore we can act.
Yeah.
And so it starts on the mat. That's where we get to practice in a safe place. And God forbid we're ever in a position like that again, and we hope that we're not. But that's the point of mind over control, and why we're teaching it to everybody, including our kids, right? And things like that. So I love that. It's more than just words. It's definitely an internalization of what is expected of our bodies, and we get to tell our bodies how to respond in trigger moments.
Yeah, I would definitely say before getting into martial arts that I would have that freeze moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And then now, knowing what I know, like, that's not gonna happen.
Right? So even on the mat you had freeze moments, right?
Oh, totally. Even
Sure.
on the mat, yeah.
Sure. Even in a safe place you froze. And sometimes still do if it's something new. This is intimidating a little bit.
So I had that experience in one of our classes. Like, obviously, like, we come from different stories. You started off I started off in just training in martial arts, being there for a job and then going into training. One of the classes, I was working with one of our senpais who I adore. And we were grappling. I have not found my love for grappling yet, but we're getting there. And he just kept flipping me back into the same position. Anytime that I got out of that position, I got back into the same exact position. And I didn't know that I had triggers still that I needed to work through. And so at some point, I literally said, "You have to get off of me." And I went into the bathroom and I just had to have a huge breakdown about it. But it was something that I didn't know I still had in me, but it was in a position where it made me feel that I was trapped, and I didn't know that I had that feeling still.
Right. Right. And so thank God you were in a place of community.
Right.
Thank God you're learning in a place of community. And you know, how did that senpai respond to you when you came back? Was he like, you know, I can't believe you quit, you didn't do this right?
You know,
or...
actually, I think for quite some time he didn't know what was happening. Because it took me a minute, like I had said, like, you have to get off me, and then I just sat there for a bit, until I got up and went to the bathroom. Now we make jokes about it all the time. And so for a while, I don't think he understood that, like, I actually had a trigger in that moment. I think that he, like, just thought, like, you know, I just didn't like grappling at the time. And so now, you know, now we make jokes about it all the time, but he was very comforting in that moment, you know, like, made sure that I was okay afterwards. And then everybody knows, like, they don't push me to my limit, so, they just give me my space until I'm ready to join back in.
So if you need space in the midst of this, do you both agree? Like, our community is strong enough. If we need space in the midst of this, we don't have to tell our whole story. We could just say, "Hey, give me a second." Is that respected?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then how does that grow our relationships in our we self-defense class? Like, how do you feel like the camaraderie is there? How do you feel like even new women that come in, you know, it's their first time. In my opinion, they immediately, first of all, they're scared, just like we all were, right?
Yeah.
I don't think, and I've asked the question before in our mat chats, like, you know, who here was nervous their first time? Because every new woman who comes in is nervous, right?
Yes.
And I think that's a common reaction, even if they're tough, they're, you know, they look like they've been doing this their whole life. Everyone has a little bit of fear and trepidation.
Yeah.
But then I feel like after our classes, you guys speak to this, I'm telling you as the instructor of the class, like, I feel that after our classes, people are feeling like their guard is down and they feel like, okay, it wasn't that bad.
Yes. I
Right?
agree with that. Yes, that's how I felt. So.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think it definitely opens up as a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
Since, you know, getting to know Rachel, it definitely opens up that moment to be able to talk and have that conversation and share a little bit more about yourself and the things you've gone through.
Yeah, for sure. And I also, I want to mention here that we have people who come in all walks of life. Not everybody who walks through our doors for this class is, you know, fit, in shape. It's not like they came from the gym and then showed up and is like, hey, we want to learn self-defenses, right? We have people in our class who are blind, or incredibly sight impaired. We have people in our classes who have had strokes and who don't have much balance. And we have elderly people in our class that walk with canes.
Yeah.
And things like that. So we have a lot of physical challenges, should I say. And then we also have mental challenges, right? So we have the people who come in with the trauma and are trying to clear those. And then we have people who say, man, I can't see, or I'm visually impaired and I walk most places because I can't drive. And I need to be able to use my senses if someone's going to take advantage of me while I'm walking down the street alone. So imagine the fear in those people when they first come to our classes. They're really afraid because they're different than most of us, right? 99% of the class.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have, like for my daughters, we have people who come in who have sensory issues and severe social anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even coming into that setting, it's difficult as it is, you know, doing a class with a bunch of women.
Right.
It's still a bunch of people, even though they're in with us with women, and it's like, you know, like mothers and stuff. That it's still social anxiety for them, and they still have sensory issues. So they don't even you know, like take their socks off, because that's one of
Right.
the things
Yep.
is
Yep.
the touching the mat, their feet feeling it. So we work with all kinds of people, and I noticed that for my daughters that this is something that they've overcome. That was like, it's not just learning self-defense and mixed martial arts, it's overcoming their social anxiety, overcoming their sensory issues.
Can you see a change in them from like when they started to now? Because
Yes.
they've been pretty close to how long you've been here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you came a couple times by yourself and then you brought them.
Yes, and then I started bringing them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can see a huge change. It's spilling out into their everyday, like their life skills. Like my daughter, she's starting to work, and that wouldn't have been something that she would have wanted, you know, to do before, because she's dealing with people.
Sure.
So, and then she does have that trauma as well, you know, from the domestic violence that they were, you know, they seen that, so they were part of that.
Yes, and so their ages are 14 and 16?
14 and 18.
14 and 18.
Yes, she just turned
Oh,
18.
you forget that all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've seen a difference. And for young girls who are coming in, I think the intimidation factor is even bigger
Yes.
because they already are in a group of women that they probably don't feel like they fit in because they're so young.
Right.
Mhm.
But
And
they
then
also did not fit into the teenage class either,
right,
because
right.
of that social anxiety. So
Right.
they refused to even go. So that's why when you allow them to come in because of the circumstances, you know, they were able to try this.
They were.
And open up.
And I remember at first, I would ask a question. They would just sit there and smile and not respond, and then immediately look at you like, "What do I say?" Even like, "Okay, what's your name?" They would look at you, and then we kind of went over like, "Don't look at your mom.
Yes.
You're fine. You can answer that question." And now we're to the point where we can give directions. They respond. I remember not too long ago, they shared in a group, everybody talked and they shared.
Yes.
Their demeanor and the way that they hold themselves has really, really changed.
Yes, and they're working with other women. Before, remember, they would just stay with either me or you.
Yeah,
or
they
Chloe.
can.
They
Yeah,
would not.
they would choose different partners now.
Yes. So.
I agree. And so far, I think that they're inspiring other children, other kids, young ladies, I should say, not children, but other young ladies. There's people there that watch them and see like, well, if they could do it, I could do it.
Yes. I
Right?
agree with that.
That's the inspiring part of it all, is that if this person who looks young can do XYZ and she's looking confident, then maybe I can give it a try.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we do that with everybody.
Sure.
Too, actually, like we definitely compare ourselves all the time. So we definitely look at them and like, they can do it, I can do it. You know.
Yes, and the growth in them is incredible. So I just see that in the beginning they would trigger a lot and just get shy and shut down, and now they're holding themselves with confidence, and as well as so many other people on the mat. I mean,
Can stand on their own.
yeah, they can stand on their own.
Yes.
And now they get to go with other people too. I'm like, okay, you're not going to be with your mom. You're
Yep.
going to go over here
Yes.
and, introduce yourself, talk, do those things. And, they look so great. Yeah.
It's all them.
Well, and you.
Yeah.
You're setting the example,
Yes. That's
right?
Yes.
You had to break the ice.
Yes.
And
Yeah, definitely.
it was really pulling teeth at first.
It really was. Yes. Yeah. And I wanted them to come initially. I just didn't want them to see the breakdown that I had there. So,
Right.
Right, you had to have your time to break through some things before they
Yes.
could.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
That's really great. So let's talk about how this helps, how our mixed martial arts and our We Unite helps with setting personal boundaries. We always talk about this in class, like how close is too close. If, Chloe and I had this experience, we were in a grocery store, I don't know, a few months back, and it was really late at night, and we were in the deodorant aisle actually, and
On the other side of the store where
on the other
nobody
side of the
is.
store, there's nobody there, there's no cashiers, there's no managers, and we were in this part of the store all by ourselves. And out of the corner of my eye, this man is, I'm not even going to say the word approaching, I'm going to say rushing us. And immediately I just went into what was now part of my, it's just part of what I
She's
do.
habit now.
It's habit, because I've built up this habit. Immediately I changed my position, I changed my stance, I put my hands up, and I backed up a few steps, and I was like, hey, stop. What do you want? So let's talk about boundaries. We talk about how close is too close. I love to ask the ladies this: how close is too close? And what's the answer?
Arm's length.
Arm's length.
Yes.
Arm's length.
Yeah. So in our self-defense classes, we learn a couple different things. It's not all physical. We get to use our body posture, the way we carry ourselves, right? We talk about how we're not going to walk around looking on our phones, with earphones on. We have to have some form of social awareness at all times.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we get to use our voice to set boundaries. So, like, one of you share, like, what are we talking about when we get to use our voice to share boundaries? What am I saying?
I had an incident the other day actually where I went to the store with my son, and there was somebody standing behind us. Like, we were going to different aisles, and this gentleman kept on going to the aisles we were in, but he had nothing in his hands, and he didn't have a cart.
Oh, weird.
So I started getting really, a little worried about it, because my son's with me, and I don't know what this gentleman's, what he wants. So when I noticed that, when he got too close to me, and I turned around, and I was like, I didn't even have to really say much. It was just like, excuse me. And then I think that just the turning around with my body movement, and then with the attitude of, I'm aware you're here, and I just said excuse me, but it wasn't like excuse me. It was like an excuse me, like
yeah, you're in my space.
Yes. So he wasn't down any other aisles after that we were down. So
good.
That's just a small thing, but I mean that could have changed the situation had I not said anything, or had I been timid, or had I been, maybe he's just, had I made excuses for a man that I don't even know. I'm thinking about me and my child, so.
And we tend to make excuses for people we don't know.
I used to, not
right? Not anymore.
Yes.
And I tell my kids all the time, and I tell the ladies at our apologize later, so you offend somebody. And I'm not an offensive person. I don't like to offend people. So typically I'm very polite, I'm very friendly, I'm gonna have a conversation with anybody, literally anywhere at any time.
Right.
We become best friends. We might exchange phone numbers. I mean, I'm that type of person. But now that I'm aware, if I've felt in the past, if I felt like you were in my space and I had that feeling like this is not safe,
right,
I might try to smile or make some form of nice, so that I could politely move out of the way. And now I just am like, you're in my space, back up.
And you have a feeling too, like there's a feeling.
I was gonna say, you have an instinct.
Yeah, like if there's somebody standing behind you and you have a feeling that, okay, well, this person's doing this, but I had a feeling that there was something off about this gentleman, so.
Right, and here's my question to you, Rachel. What if you were wrong?
So he might have thought I was rude.
Right.
I said, excuse me. I mean, it might have had attitude about it, but I said, excuse me.
What if you're wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, well. That's the way I put it.
Right.
Oh, well. Right. And so we have
They'll get over it.
Yes, exactly. And that's not our intentions, but now I feel like most of us have come to the place that we've been doing this for a while, that we can set firm boundaries.
Yeah.
We start with our voice.
Yes.
Setting that firm boundary with our voice, like, hey, excuse me, back up, whatever it is, you're too close, step back, what do you want, whatever it is.
Right, like I think even like with our excuse me, like whatever we say, we have an attitude behind.
And
right.
a face.
And a face.
And a face.
The posture.
The way we hold ourselves, right? We're not frumped over. This is all growth in mixed martial arts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what we've learned on the mat.
Yes, I wouldn't have done that before.
No, and it's not something that we told you had to do. Like, okay, stand up straight, Rachel. Like, what changed? How come your posture is different?
Confidence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Feeling the strength, feeling the things that you've learned. Empowered.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have just a little story. We have a woman in our class. She's young. She's one of my daughter's ages. So about 26, 27 years old. and she's a runner, so physically she is extremely fit. And if you look at her, she's fit. And she was at a marathon. She finished the marathon and was walking to her car. This just happened a few weeks ago. She was walking to her car, and she noticed she's very aware. Her boundaries are very aware. She's looking around, and she noticed someone on the opposite side of the street, across the road from her. At least 2 lanes of traffic, maybe 4. I'm not sure how big the street was, but at least 2 lanes of traffic. And the guy made eye contact with her, put his hood over his head. He was wearing a hoodie, put his hood over his head, and then pulled his mask up over his face and crossed the road.
Oh, wow.
And then started approaching her. So she kind of moved to the left, and he moved to the left and blocked her. And then she moved to the right, and he moved to the right and blocked her. And then suddenly she just got this mind over power, and she was like, "Stop. What are you doing? Back up." Well, that body posture gave him a little bit of pause, but it didn't stop him. So he lunged towards her, and she had the wherewithal to throw something at him, and it missed. But what was happening was that he saw that she wasn't going to be an easy target. So she kind of held her ground, right? And then he came.
Gave some fight.
She gave some fight because her confidence level. And then, thank God she was aware this whole time. She wasn't looking down. She saw him across the road. Like, all of these little systems were put in place for her to protect herself. And then he lunged at her again and tried to come behind her to grab her from behind in a chokehold. And something in her, she was listening, and something in her said, "Do not turn your back." And so she turned towards him and put her hands up, and then she had something else, and she threw that at him, and it hit him. And she used her voice again and said, "You better back up." And then all of a sudden something switched in him, and he stopped, and he looked at her, and then he turned around and walked away. And you know what she did? She stood there and stared at him until he got out of sight. Was she full of fear? Absolutely she was, right?
Right.
But I'm so proud of her. She stood her ground, and that made all the difference between an attack. I mean, that alone was scary.
Yes.
It made all the difference in the world between what could have been a terrible attack and what wasn't. And then she called the police. She got to her car. She locked the door. She immediately called the police, and they arrested the wrong guy. The first guy that fit the description, it was the wrong one. And she was like, I couldn't even feel bad at the time, because we just have to find the injustice in this, that people are walking the streets. And she said, "No, this isn't the guy," and they let him go. And then they did find the right guy afterwards.
Okay.
But she set clear boundaries, and it saved her life, I think.
Yeah, she wasn't an easy target.
And she wasn't an easy target.
Well, and she had so much awareness to identify the guy by his shoes.
That's right.
He had no shoelaces.
That's
he
right,
Could
Chloe.
She could identify that.
That's right. When she saw his shoes, she said, "Nope, that guy has shoelaces, the other guy didn't." You're right about that.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yep,
Awareness is huge then.
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's something that we try to drill over and over and
Yes.
over again, is awareness and that self-confidence and boundary setting.
Yeah. Definitely. How do you guys think like your awareness has changed since we've done mixed martial arts? I've been aware like my whole life, walking around, I've always paid attention to what's around me. But I think like what do you guys feel the difference is now that you are in mixed martial arts?
It's changed a lot. I'm very aware of my surroundings. I don't look down at my phone anymore. And when we're shopping with our kids, you can be all over the place. But I'm all over the place still. But I'm very aware. Like, if I'm using my ears, my eyes, I'm using my senses.
Yeah.
Everything, intuition. I'm just very aware.
Yeah. I think a lot of women, it depends on the age and what you've experienced, right? So depending on what you've gone through, your awareness is either higher or lower.
Yeah.
If you've lived a life and you haven't been through any social injustices or any type of traumas like that, because it just hasn't crossed your path, I mean, that is really wonderful. Then I have to train those people like, hey, when you're walking to your car, don't look at your phone. But if you've been in experiences before, you kind of think to yourself, I better not look at my phone. But all of our senses kind of dull a little bit after time, right?
Yeah.
And so then I like to say that sixth sense, right? We have our five senses, but then we have the sixth sense. That's like the gut.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one that we try to talk down. That's the one that we try to be polite with. That's the one that we're like, okay, well,
maybe we're wrong.
right?
Yeah.
Just because you have, right, the stereotypic things, just because you're wearing a hoodie, a black hoodie with black pants, doesn't mean you're, and no, it's not about what you're wearing. It's not about.
We like to feel bad for stereotypes.
Right.
Yes.
So we don't want to do that. We want to say, listen, there's this sixth sense and I feel uncomfortable, whatever that is. And for all of us, I think we've sitting here in this group, like your grocery store experience the other day, our grocery store experience, the person who approached us was actually very good looking young man, right? Like that, I would say, yeah, I'd like my daughter to date him, young. So it wasn't about appearance, but it was about something in my gut that was like, nope, right? Not today. You better stand back. And my body posture actually commanded him. And when I took a step back, he actually stopped and took a step back.
Which is funny because I saw the same guy at Target.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Just like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, just recently. And he did not have the same posture. He did not act the same way. But I was also with with my brother, so I was also with a male figure. And his posture was very different, My posture was very different, I was like, you better get the hell away from me. Like, I know who you are. And he did not. He literally was like, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to him. And I was like, excuse me. Like, and I'm trying to get my brother to go because I know all about him, and he didn't. And he's trying to play nice, and I'm like, we have to leave. We have to go. Like, we're not playing in this. We gotta go. And he did not have that posture. He was very aggressive and pushing towards that for a very long time until I grabbed his hand and was like, let's go.
Right. So yeah, of course, posturing changes, and you were with your brother, so you felt a little different.
Yeah.
And probably even more emboldened because you were aware of the situation. You knew who the person
I
was.
knew who it was.
You've been in a position with that person before. Yeah. And basically he's trying to get money. He's telling a fake story about his music career and he's trying to get people to give $50, $100 to whatever. Mm-hmm. But he's super aggressive and he's targeted women.
Very aggressive.
And if it's a woman, he's very aggressive. If it's a male, he's kind of friendly, like, hey bro.
So he was very friendly with him. With me, brother, he was very aggressive and was like I'm not speaking to you. Well, somebody else had stepped in and was like, dude, leave the girl alone. And he went about to say that I'm the one that was assaulting him.
Right.
In the situation, and I was like, oh no, we're not doing that.
So yeah. Overall, your confidence has boosted, for sure, on how to handle yourself.
Definitely.
In situations, which is great. And I could see that with all of us, actually. Obviously this is my daughter, so I'm with her more often than I am with Rachel. But just to hear some of your stories, of course, our confidence has boosted because we've started to build trust in ourselves and trust in others around us who are teaching us.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you guys would agree with that.
Yes.
And so let's talk about coping mechanisms really quick. I love that mixed martial arts teaches us how to cope with some things like anxiety, stress, PTSD. What do you guys find when you're using what you've learned? How does that help you cope with some of those things?
Okay. So, I also had an issue with severe social anxiety. That's probably something that stemmed from the domestic violence. But after doing, Women's Empowered and doing mixed martial arts with that, going into the stores and it's no longer social anxiety. I think it was more of me being scared before, or having that, I had no confidence, I had low self-esteem. If I was getting it at home, imagine getting it in public, right?
Sure.
I think that's just where it was at.
Mhm.
So now it's totally different. It's not social anxiety. It's just pure awareness. So and my mindset too. The mind over power thing is very, that's very strong for me.
Mm.
So I mean,
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah,
but
that's good. That's good. What about you, Chloe? How do you use the mixed martial arts in coping with different things?
You know, it took me a really long time to actually want to be in it. You know, actually want to be in mixed martial arts and learn how to defend myself. I had a very negative mindset about it for a very long time. Now I think, like, one, it would just be to constantly show up, like, just constantly remain in it, because it constantly brings something different out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, just being, for me, typically, being in the dojo is my coping mechanism. Like, when I'm not in the dojo, it changes my mindset completely. Even taking, like, a week off, like, for vacation, and then I step back in the dojo, or if you're sick and you have to stay home for a couple of days, like, that changes my whole mentality than being in that dojo. I guess it's just my, you know, my community that I have there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just being in that presence is my coping mechanism.
Yeah, you feel peace, safety.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just being there, being out on the mat, watching what's going on, that's my coping mechanism.
Yeah. For me, I feel the same way. I love our community. I love our place. I love what we do. I love the people that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of our experienced trainers and senpais, and then I like how they've taught me. You know, we always feel like people are watching us. So when we first start, right, you feel like everybody's watching and I'm not hitting this right. And, you know, people are going to make fun of me because, you know, you hear that you hit like a girl. Well, then I was like, well, I am a girl. So yeah, maybe I do hit like one. That's fine. But now I'm like, I might hit like a girl, but I'm about to knock your butt out if you come close. Don't matter. So, but, I love how we can release negative energy when we're training. And I found that when I was training like 5 days a week for a while, that's what we were doing, 5 days a week. Man, I slept like a baby. And it wasn't because I was exhausted. You might come in full of stress and anxiety and, you know, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And then you get out there and you start working and moving and hitting and kicking and, you know, practicing whatever you're working on.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you leave like, oh, I feel good.
Yeah, and with that said, like, you know, you have a bad day at work, something happened right before you're supposed to go and do class, and then you're like, I just don't want to do it anymore. Like, I would rather go home. I don't want to be here anymore. But really being out on that mat and releasing all of that, forcing yourself to go to class is what changes your mindset on that.
Well, don't they say that mixed martial arts is a discipline?
Yeah, absolutely they do.
Right. So we discipline ourselves to stay when we want to go. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm a mom of many and there's days I'm tired and we're doing, you know, we're doing our instructors classes or, you know, I'm getting trained by our grandmaster to lead the women's self-defense class. And, yeah, the discipline of just showing up even when you don't feel like it, or even when you don't feel good, or even when you're having a bad day.
You've seen me, something's happened right before class, and I'm like, Mom, I don't want to go out there, and you're like, it'll fix all the issues, you know, take your stress out on the mat.
Yeah,
it definitely does. I mean,
yeah, it does. And we had this is kind of funny, but it's true. So I don't know, about a month or two ago, we had this much older lady. I don't want to call her elderly, but she's elderly, you know, older than me, but much older lady. I'd say she's, you know, maybe mid to late 70s, and she even had a cane and she was on the mat. And I was trying to teach her like how she can use her cane and her hand that wasn't holding the cane just to like shock them. You know, is she gonna knock somebody out? Probably not. but she was hitting the bag. She said, no, well, I want to hit it. I want to hit it with both hands. And I was like, okay. So, you know, we were warming up and she was hitting the bag. She was throwing her 1-2s on the bag. And afterwards I asked her, how did it feel? And she's like, I don't remember who it was, but she named the bag. She gave the bag a name.
Did.
Let's just call it Bob. No offense to any Bob who's listening, but she was like, oh yeah, I gave it to Bob. Like, she beat up Bob. So, you know,
Got a handful of that.
that's right. She gave it to Bob on the, you know, that bag was Bob that
Yeah.
day or whatever. And I love that even she could make the connection with stress release. It's for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
Even she could do it, right?
Yes.
And to me, that's where it's at. That's where it's at.
Definitely.
And so we do have real life stories about real life people, and this is just a few of them. We've named a few of them, and there's even more. We could go on, but this podcast would be too long. But our success stories with people learning to overcome and finding triumph over their traumas is a real deal. These aren't just made up stories, and they're still progressing. We're all in progress, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have not arrived, like, at all. And it's funny because people are like, you know, we had someone come in not too long ago and she is built, she looks like she's been doing something all of her life, but her confidence level, she was like, no, I have no confidence and I have no self-esteem. Like, I look like this, but that means nothing. This is like a facade.
Your
And
appearance doesn't
your appearance doesn't
make
anything.
it. Yeah.
And then she looked at me and she said, yeah, you've been doing this, you know, I haven't been doing mixed martial arts my whole life like you. And then I just chuckled, right? Because that shows the transformation in me. I just thought that was funny. I was honest with her and I was like, I have not done mixed martial arts my whole life. Like, I was a dancer and a swimmer. Like,
You're like, it's been like 2-3 years.
what you see is my transformation and how I'm
Yeah.
carrying myself differently. And I was already a competent person socially, so I didn't have any like social anxieties. But like I said, I would not be able to defend myself. So, you know, my husband's big, I'd be like, here you go, right? If I was with him. But what would I do if I was alone? I didn't have that confidence. And now it's
Right.
growing and growing and growing and growing to where, you know, I've been in positions where I can hold myself differently. And that's what we're teaching everybody, including the 70-year-olds. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. And so it brings about holistic healing. And Rachel, you mentioned that earlier. You said I had done the therapy and psychotherapy,
counseling, a lot of it.
but you hadn't done the physicality.
Not at all. No, I didn't even know I had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know I had to do that until I got on that mat.
And a lot of women don't.
No,
I didn't.
it's like
I
literally
didn't.
trapped in your. It's literally trapped in there.
Like in your cells, in your
Yes.
muscle memory.
Yeah, muscle memory. That's it.
Yes. So we have to retrain muscle memory.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
And it's possible, right? So if you're watching this and you're like, no, you don't understand what I've been through, you don't understand my experiences, it was rough, like, you know, I had the worst experience. It is possible to start tearing down the negative muscle memory and replacing it with positive muscle memory,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
It is possible.
It is very possible.
And one of the things that you had mentioned was you played your experiences, your negative experience, on repeat. And I had said, now it's time to replace that negative memory with true empowering, right, physicality.
Yes.
And it's working.
It's working. Yes. I don't see when we're doing those moves now. It's about me learning how to get out of it and mastering that and doing it faster, right?
Mhm.
Making it more fluid instead of breaking down the moves. Whereas before it was, I kept on seeing that play of me being in that chokehold, and that was it.
That was the end of the
That
story.
was the end of the story.
In your mind.
Yes,
Yeah, that was the end of the story. You hadn't
Yeah.
conquered it.
No.
And now what started off with just women, you've actually tried with some of our instructors
Yes.
and with men.
Yes.
And that was really difficult, but you've actually done it, and now you are like, okay, I'm getting better and better at this.
Yes.
You haven't arrived.
No, definitely.
I don't think any of us ever will. Mixed martial arts is an ongoing process. We should do it our whole lives.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Like, I want
Definitely.
every single one of my kids to experience this.
Yes. Yes. All of my kids are in
Yes.
mixed martial arts, so it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have several of them in there. I have 11,
Yeah.
so my odds are a little bit different. But I have 11. Some of my grandkids are have tried it or have gone to classes. My children, but I think every single person needs this in their life. This discipline.
They do. Yeah. It's like I would almost say it's like a lifestyle now, because it's something you do on the
Yeah.
mat, but you take everything you learn on the mat to your life, so you're applying it constantly. It's not
Constantly.
Oh,
just-
totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
we
not
tell
just
that
on
to our
that.
kids all the time. You know, I'm telling my son, you show up, you work hard. It's not so you could be the next best UFC fighter. It's so that you could be the best leader, so
Yeah.
that you hold yourself with integrity and honor. It's the way you speak to people. It's the way you conduct your life, your business, right?
Yeah.
It's about how you hold yourself for self-defense. We want to teach our littles how to be, first and foremost, how to defend themselves,
Yes.
especially in today's world. What were you going to say?
Yeah,
Chloe?
and if you listen to the Brotherhood podcast, that's what they go over all the time, is how to and apply that to your daily life and what it looks like. Senpai Brian goes over it and what it looks like to apply that to your life.
Yeah, what it looks like to apply a specific technique to your everyday life, right? And I love what they do. So if you're watching this and you're a woman, please listen to the men's podcast too. You're going to get just as much out of it. And they have some really great points on mixed martial arts and how it goes with our daily life. And so as we're wrapping this up, I like to say that, you know, we are women's self-defense classes. It's women's self-defense and fitness, because we need the agility and the cardio to be able to defend ourselves. If we're ever put in a position where we have to defend ourselves, we have to be able to endure, because when you're defending yourself, your heart is already racing. You've not released any physical yet, but your adrenaline is already
Right.
going. So you can tank really quick. So we start off with some fitness. We warm up a little bit. And we tailor it to meet everybody's needs. So if you're watching this and you're 70, or you're watching this and you have a physical impairment, you don't say to yourself, I can't do it because I can't do the physicality part of it. We tailor this to fit everybody's needs.
Yep.
Everybody can partake. It doesn't matter what kind of physical condition you're in. There's something for everyone, right? And then we work into self-defenses using your body and how you operate, how your body functions. And so if there's a physical impairment, that's fine, or a physical handicap, that's fine. We make it fit you so that you can make space. That the whole idea of self-defense is not to stop and fight and you know, kickbox or grapple. The point of self-defense is to make enough space and to create enough shock factor that you can create the space so that you can run and get away.
Yeah.
So we work through all of that.
Yes. Even
No.
people with sensory issues.
Yep, even people with sensory issues, what does that look like? We work with that. There's a place where we're open and honest about some of the things that we struggle with. We talk about our challenges and stuff. And then at the end, we have a mat chat. And last week, I loved our mat chat. And this is how we're going to wrap it up. And maybe you guys can take something away from this today as well. But we have our mat chat. We talk about what we loved, what challenged us.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that comes our personal stories sometimes tears. We get to come around the other ladies who have experienced something either recently or in their past that, you know, they need friendship and community to surround them. You know, you can do this. We're so happy you're here. We get to listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we try to like challenge ourselves in one way or another. But last week, we noticed that our shirts have "We Unite," Women Empowered Unite, and we noticed that someone was wearing an empowered shirt, and it happened to be purple. Wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was. It was purple like our shirts here, and it said "empowered" across the front. And we thought it would be a great idea to leave with affirmations. And so we went around the circle and we said, like, what are we going to take away this week? Like, what is our word for the week that we're going to be focusing on as we go home and practice, or as we go to our jobs, or as we parent our kids, or we go to school, or whoever's in the whoever's in the room, whatever's in the community. What are we going to take away? And that was kind of fun, right? To go around the group and hear what everybody said. And some words were empowered, capable, confident. I'm trying to think of a few. There was quite many women in there. But then, Rachel, you shared one that I think we should end on. You just said it before our podcast when we were talking about it, but
Freedom.
Freedom.
Yes, because you don't feel chained down. Like I feel a freedom after this, because I didn't feel free at first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, like you're not being confident and being insecure and feeling beaten down, and identifying myself as a victim at first. That I didn't feel free, but now I feel the freedom because I don't identify as a victim anymore. You know?
Yeah, I love that.
Yes. So, freedom.
That's freedom. That's amazing. And that's how I kind of want to end, because I feel like this class does bring freedom to so many people who have been imprisoned, either in their minds, mentally, physically, emotionally. Yes. Yeah, this brings mixed martial arts, and what we're trying to do for the community through We Unite is, and the MMA Brotherhood and the Warrior and Team Warrior classes that we have, it is actually bringing freedom to so many individuals that didn't know that they can experience this, right, in their lives. And we offer these classes. They're free. Speaking of freedom, they are free to the community. And we want to invite you to be a part of it. They are free. You can look at our website. I'm sure that will be linked in this podcast. You can see when our classes take place if you live in the Surprise area. We're hoping that this grows well beyond where we are, our location. We're looking for this to go worldwide and then global. And we are looking to unite 1 million strong. And so wherever you are in the world, and if you're watching this podcast today, make sure that you click the link 1 million strong and join the movement of empowering people in your communities. And I think that we can make a really big difference. And soon this is going to spread like wildfire. And people all over the world are going to experience freedom in one way or another, whether you're just watching this podcast, whether you join the Million Strong movement and you get access to some of our vaulted videos on self-defense, or if you just call the phone number and you want to talk to some of us and how you could get this going in your area of the world, we would love to talk to you. So hey, thanks. This was a great talk, and I'm glad that we did this. Triumph over trauma. And we are living testimonies. So thanks for joining us today. Yeah, thanks guys.